Okay, thank you again for joining. My name is Olatunji Olatunji. Welcome to Scaling Your Energy and Climate Business. And today we're focusing particularly on fundraising. And we've titled this program, How to Raise Your First $1 Million. I'll just do a bit of overview and then I'll be bringing in the speakers. Right, so the presentation would have this outline. So I'll make a bit of introduction of the speakers. We'll go to Q&A. We add a little bit of spotlights, and then we'll talk about Afla Adventure Lab. So welcome again. We all know the impact of climate change and the global pressing challenges that is urgent, and so we need a lot of sustainable climate solutions. And we know that startups have emerged everywhere, and they are powerful drivers of change, at the forefront of this kind of transformation that we're looking for. So we've put together this webinar to address how we can fund startups. And there's a bit of funding data that we have here. So between 2014 and 2022, the first quarter, 167 African climate startups successfully raised 2.1 billion. These are the ones that were disclosed, right? And then this is according to Bright. And 15 of this 15% of the total funding were raised by this figure, 2.1 billion, is 15% of the total funding raised by the tech startups in Africa. And even in 2021 alone, climate tech recorded 440 million in funding. So this has demonstrated that there's growth in this climate focused sector. And if you go a bit and you think of what's happening in Kenya climate startups attracted the most funding over that period. And total is about 1.2, and this was followed by Nigerian, which is about 450 million in 65 deals. So the type of funding generally, ranges from grants to blended finance, equity, and everything that is in between. So you can still look at this sheet it says the total funding, the number. So this particular sheet says 2.4 because this captures to the end of 2021, and the total number of deals, how many comes from clean tech. And this funding, these are the lead funders, USADF, EdFi, Electrify, E3 Capital, Acumen, Oiko Credit, and what have you. So top investment geographies, Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana. But I mean, there's a lot of answers in between. So this kind of reasoning makes us believe that there's a lot of opportunities and growth in this climate tech sector, energy and climate tech. And what we have done is to put together a venture building platform. So basically, Afla Adventure Lab is a climate and energy focused venture builder that helps SMEs and startups with high growth and high impact potential. And our goal is to help you become sustainable, commercially viable, and investment ready at the end of the day, right? So with this in mind, we have put together this webinar, and I'm going to start by so the model will be this. The mode will be this. Our first speaker, I'll read out his profile, introduce him. Then he will speak for a couple of minutes. Then the second speaker would also speak for a couple of minutes. Then we'll have a Q&A session before we go ahead. So before I call in the first speaker, let me just introduce myself. I'm not going to read out this, but just a summary of myself. My name is Laomi Olatunji. I'm the founder, co-founder, and CEO at Brockville Investments. Basically, we focus on providing advisory in the energy and natural resource space. I started out my career in the financial service sector, working in two commercial banks before I worked as a consultant in upstream oil and gas industry. I've also worked as an advisor for PFAN, which is Private Finance Advisory Network, funded by UNIDO and RIP. I also advise on Get Invest, and that's Finance Catalyst. I have a degree in petroleum geoscience, and I'm also a charter holder of the Chartered Global Investment Analyst Network, and I'm a certified financial modeler by Corporate Finance Institute. Right, so that's enough about me. I'll go quickly now to introduce our first keynote speaker, who is Rotimi Thomas. So Rotimi, thank you so much for being here. So Rotimi is the managing partner and co-founder at Aspire Power Solutions that launched Sunfire. So Sunfire is a community to scale clean.
Sorry, yeah, so I just wanted to correct that. I'm not with Aspire Power Solutions. I'm just the CEO and co-founder of Sunfire.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. That's fine. So that's to correct that. So Rotimi is the founder, CEO of Sunfire, and he has a background in project development, large infrastructure investment, entrepreneurship, and wealth management, and human resources at large companies across North America, Europe, and Africa. And Rotimi had years of experience in fund investment development as a renewable energy consultant. He's on a journey to build impact-driven companies born out of Africa that make the world a better place by solving problems present in frontier markets. This is aimed to be achieved through digitalizing energy value chains, making them cleaner, more reliable, and more accessible. Rotimi Thomas is in support of circular energy initiatives that help reduce plastics, CHG emissions, and waste. And just to add that Sunfire raised $2.3 million in seed funding to expand clean energy solutions in Nigeria. So it's my pleasure, and everybody at Brockville and Afla Adventure Lab, we're so excited and happy to have you here, Rotimi.
All right. So you want me to go, right?
Yes, please go. Do you have a screen to share?
No. Well, maybe as part of the presentation, can you give me the speaking or the sharing screen capability?
Yeah, sure. Done. So you can share your screen if you want to.
Okay, so you know what? I'll just speak a little bit about why what we are doing in Sunfire is relevant, and my goal is that I hope that it inspires some of you in the audience as well in terms of how you're shaping your narratives and how you can bring this to financiers. But I'll just give you a taste of the kind of thing that we send out to people that we're working with. So that you can see the way that we're trying to position the narrative for consumers, and then how we take that narrative and bring it to partners. So, allow me, you said I can share, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll just share a brief snippet of what we look at. Can you see my screen?
It's coming up.
All right, hold on, let's see. Is there?
Yes, we can see it now. Just full screen, and then it's good.
All right. Let's see. All right. Do you see the full screen now, or is it showing like any text or below? Or, like,
full screen now, yes.
All right. Perfect. So this is a document that we send out to partners that these are partner channels that we're trying to say to them, look, why is your community suffering? So the Outlier Adventure Lab is a community, right? There's 33 of you on this call, or 33 of us on this call. Some of you are struggling with this issue of petrol generator in your homes right now or in your businesses, right? And what Sunfire is trying to do is bring embedded financing and integrate it into our technology platform so that some of you in this room that are struggling with access to capital to be able to bring in consumers that think the cost of solar is too expensive up front are now able to have a point of sale financing partner that's right there with you, that translates any of your products into payment plans as long as we approve of them. And so the narrative that we're all kind of going through right now is, petrol and energy prices, they're soaring. They started with the diesel prices, started with the Ukraine war, but it's now persistent and it's a fundamental shift. It's here to stay. Your communities, the communities you are a part of, this community, every one of us is touched when energy prices start to accelerate, and they're not going to decelerate. The trend over history and over time is that they increase as more demand is placed on them and as they become more scarce. And this makes all of us less productive. So people that are working from home, people that are working in their shops, some of them have to close down their shops. So they have to change their working hours. We're hearing from tons of bedding companies right now that some of the shops are closing, and this affects these guys that are a huge source of income for a lot of people in the informal market right now. Solar, as we know, is way more than 50% cheaper. In fact, it's a free resource. It's just the CapEx, it's the upfront capital that's the problem. And so this is why the type of solution we are offering in collaboration with smaller solar partners that are out there every day hitting the pavement, trying to find consumers and transition them. They are the heroes. They are the heroes of the story. We are just behind propelling them, right? And so with that tool now, they can actually make solar accessible and make it as cheap as it should be and help consumers make that transition. And these communities are searching for these solutions, but they want payment plans. They want them fast, they want them affordable, and they want to make sure that the solutions offered to them are trusted. So as all of you think about your businesses, I want to encourage you to think about your narrative. There's a deck that we leveraged or that we were trained on called the Best Sales Deck Ever. It's a Medium article. I'm happy to share the link to you all. And that helped us kind of shape our own story and narrative. So we essentially walk through, we give you a big shock and tell you that, hey, look, fuel prices are taking off. You can see this chart. The story is that it's going up. It's not going the other way. And it's way worse for you today than it has ever been. 3.5x increase in fuel prices is phenomenal. And so we go through this kind of narrative just to shock the people that we're speaking with into a state of, okay, what can we do about this? And so as all of you are going out and you're thinking and just thinking about the title or how to raise your first million, think about narrative, the power of storytelling. This deck doesn't have too much information in it. It just tells a story, right? Power is not available. Your people are suffering. You have to do something about this. There's an alternative that's cheaper. We're a partner that can help you with that. And here's how our solution works. We ask a very hard question. Is your business, your community, and your family ready for one of the most important economic shifts in Nigeria's history? This is the kind of powerful question that opens dialogue and sets you up for powerful narratives and helps you to innovate. So I'll stop here. There's a lot more in this thing, but I just wanted to use this as a sample of the kind of mindset that I hope that lots of the people in the audience will adopt as you are going out into the world to try and raise money. Hey, look, I'm here to support you all. I'm a huge fan of renewable energy, other forms of clean energy, circular economy, sustainable agriculture, sustainable housing, electric mobility. All those things are in Sunfires' path. We started with the solar asset class today, but over the coming years, we will be supporting these different asset classes because our goal is to unlock the low carbon economy out of Africa, not from the rest of the world, out of Africa. So I'll stop and maybe hand it back over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, the perspective you brought in is very key. I remember when I used to coach entrepreneurs and at African Entrepreneurship Award, this is the exact thing I'll tell them: come with your story. Your story is like the closing hook for your presentation. When you're presenting to investors, when you're at a boot camp or whatever, that story is what will help them hang on to your presentation and want to listen for more. I remember then in Morocco, there was a particular entrepreneur from Uganda. And in my initial perspective of him was that he was the least qualified in terms of articulation. He couldn't articulate so much. But I sat with him one and I told him, Mohammed, you need to sit down and find a story. And he found a narrative of how he came from a very poor background and he's using health and fitness to move people forward, to help people, change their story. So he was able to craft that story in a way that every single investor that listened to him, they were so excited. And that particular day, his team was able to win $100,000 because he brought a powerful story that was moving, that moved people. So thank you for that. The fact that you bring in data, you bring in facts into your storytelling and have the right narrative is powerful. So thank you. We are going to bring a lot of questions. We've already asked our community some questions beforehand, but we're also going to take questions on this call. So, with that, we already spent that 15 minutes. I'm going to call on our very next speaker. So let me share my screen again. Right, so I'm going to read through Olumide's profile now, and then I'll call on him for his own talk. So Olumide Lawson is a partner at Sahel Agribusiness Managers, a private equity and advisory firm focused primarily in agribusiness in Nigeria. Olumide began his career in the commercial banking group of Guarantee Trust Bank. From there, he joined the financial control and unit of asset and resource management company as ARM. Olumide was previously the CFO of Luthos Capital, senior freelance roles at Oando as Ocean and Oil holdings and then legacy royalties. Since mid-2013, he has been one of the fund managers and a member of the investment committee of FAFIN. That's the Fund for Agricultural Finance in Nigeria. He also sits on the board of 3 of the fund portfolio companies that FAFIN manages. Olumide specializes in financial control analysis. He holds is a CFA charter holder, designated ACA, and he holds a BSc in accounting from Obafemi Awolowo University. And I would like to add as well, Olumide is a speaker on personal finance. He's actually the author of a book called My Money Toolbox. So with all this, we're honored, we're excited to have you here, Olumide. Talk to us about your perspective when it comes to raising finance.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you, Laomi, for inviting me. I'll start by just commending Laomi and the Outlier group. I believe that the SME group is one of the severely underserved group, so I think individuals, institutes that are working to provide guidance to them, I think is a great thing to do. And thanks a lot, Rotimi, for sharing that. I think that overview was quite helpful. So going to my presentation, like I'm listening to Laomi, you would have seen a lot about agriculture. You're wondering, hey, this is about renewable energy and stuff. But I think how I would like to share is drawing a parallel between what I do and what you guys do. And I think what I've seen is that from agriculture, that there's quite a lot of investor interests in areas that relate to impact. So I think a lot of the successes that we have had in raising capital, the lot of people that we have invested in agriculture is not only on the return side, but also on the impact side. And I think when I go through my slides, you see what I mean. So I think because the areas that you guys operate is also one that has substantial, significant impact. I think there are lots of learnings from what I've done that will probably be helpful for you guys. So what I'll be doing over the next, like say 10 minutes or so, is that I'm going to be sharing with you some of the things that we look at, like Laomi mentioned. So we are fund managers that we invest in SMEs, Though my fund is specialized in agriculture, but I think generally it's almost like this will probably be the same learning with somebody else that's looking at renewable energy, healthcare, and all those groups that relate to that have substantial impact. Laomi, I'm going to share my screen.
Yes, you can.
Oops. Sorry, can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, I think let me try to. Sorry, let me stop sharing. Okay. Let me just okay, so I titled them. I have just about 8 slides to share, so I'll be quick. So I think it's really just about how do you unlock business financial opportunities. So some things are very clear. If you speak to entrepreneurs, most of them, if you ask them what is the issue, we need funding. So
could you navigate to the first slide? We're actually at the end.
Oh, okay. So on my screen is showing the first slide.
Oh, I see.
Let me stop sharing. Let me stop sharing, and I'll start again.
Okay.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes. But I don't think this. Okay. Yes. So if you can put on full screen, I think.
Okay. Oh. Is it showing as full screen on your side? If not, perhaps maybe you might need to share it from your side. Please allow me. If you have this, I think you have the slide.
Oh yes, I do.
Sorry, but can you see my screen? Because I think I'm having some internet issues.
You can go ahead. It's not full screen.
But pardon my asking. Oh, okay. So it's full screen here. So yeah, so I think I'll just be sharing with you some of the things that we look at in assessing SMEs and seeing why we feel that they are good for good investments. So like I said earlier, so it's not unusual to speak to SMEs, entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs feel that they need financing, and most of them actually do. You know, another is that speaking to them, you always see that optimism. You know that this business can make $20 million, it can make 20 times money and co. That's also not unusual. But what a lot of people don't know is that no matter how interesting your story might be in your head, you know, in any business, especially SMEs, you have to show that you've gone through a rigorous level of thinking through it to make it clear to somebody that's putting their money, you know, is willing to back you. So it's one thing for you to have the idea, but it's another thing to be able to present it in a way that somebody will listen to it and believe that indeed you know what you're talking about. Now, so I'm going to share a few of the nuggets that we put in mind. You know, so the first is what is your business case? What is your business case? So sorry, I have a feeling that my screen is not moving.
Yes, it's not moving.
Oh dear. Sorry, I think I'm having an internet challenge.
Okay, I'm going to download your presentation now, and then I'll share it on me.
Okay, so maybe in the interest of time, I'll just I'll try and, since I realize that you guys are not seeing the slides, so I think I'll probably just speak a bit more to it, bearing in mind that you can't see it. Oh, is it up now?
Yes, I've downloaded it and I'm presenting, so although it's PDF.
Okay. No, it's all right. But I think it will work. I think it will work, at least in the interest of time. Yeah. So yeah. So I think I've spoken about. So it's not unusual, you know, for one to feel that as SM. I think if you go to, please go down a little bit to the. Yes. So I think the first is what is your business case? You know, by business case, I don't necessarily mean a well-written out, well-laid out business plan. It's really what is the story, like maybe like how Rotimi and Olaomi presented it, that what is really the story you're selling to investors. You know, it's almost like what people talk about your elevator pitch, that in 2 minutes or in 3 minutes, what is that story that you are selling to investors that them leaving your office, you know, that this is what this company stands for, that, oh, this company is doing X, they are doing Y, they are planning to do X, and they are planning to do Y. Now, sometimes the story might be more around impact, you know, and of course, this will speak to the kind of investors you're talking to. There are some investors that are more impact inclined, and there are some that are more financial returns inclined. You know, so of course, if you know that the way you've structured your business, or where you think your real story is around the changes that it's making to lives and things like that, that means you're selling a strong impact story, and that is probably going to be where the areas that you're going to be focusing a lot of your attention on when it comes to investments. If it's on the other one, that fine, because it's an impact area, but there's a strong, even despite that, there's a strong commercial returns that you can make, then that is the story you're telling. So it can be whether we have a full impact story, or we're a full potential commercial return story, or we're a combination, But I think that story is so. In fact, I think many times by the time you meet with an investor, with a potential investing company or pipeline, you want to leave there excited about what the person is doing, So which is why the issue around that story is so important. Now, the next slide, what do investors look for? What do investors look for? So this one, I think I just brought out 5 of the things that I actually look for when I'm talking to potential pipeline companies. So the first one is character, and because at the end of the day, you don't really know anybody 100%, but you want to be sure that whoever you are getting in bed with, is somebody that you can actually, that you can trust, Since I've not known you for like 20, 35, 40 years. So what I'll probably do is to try to find out as much as I can, speak to your bankers, speak to people that have known you from maybe your former employers, former employees. Sometimes we even actually check social media handles, just to understand the kind of person that you're investing in. But many times it's not just some businesses can be very, very good, with the ability to be a viable business, but the willingness or the person that you're dealing with is just not the type of people that you want to deal with, So many times track record, understanding what you've done before, I think is usually very, very important. Now, another one is still on this slide, competent management. So for us, what we've seen is that many times you have we see businesses, they will see one very, very strong MD CEO, and then there's really nobody else. So you're asking all the questions, and it's just a gentleman or a lady that is responding to everything, And I think that gives some level of concern to us that when, what is the business continuity plan? If this person is not here, how will this business run? So that gives some level of concerns, when we're speaking. Then the next one is scalability, because when you're investing in the business, you're seeing the business now, but you really want to understand what the impact of your investment, that your that your $1 million. You want to see what the impact is going to be. That if I give you this $1 million, I was reaching out. Initially, I was reaching out to 1 million Nigerians, but with this $1 million, I can now reach out to 7 million Nigerians. Then I can now decide that okay, is this worth my while? Is this really, or is there anywhere else I can put the money? So it's really to understand how based on the addition, let me just leaving the money aside now, how can you tell the story of how your business can actually grow? Nobody plans to buy a business, no matter how wonderful the business is now, if they don't see how the value of what they are putting in will even be a little bit higher than what they are putting, either higher in terms of impact or higher in terms of financial returns, depending on what the view is. The other area is proper records. I'm sorry, I'm rushing a little bit. The other area is proper records. So it's good to know your business. It's good to know all the numbers offhand. But many times any investor, simply because they are finance people, they will not just take your word for it. And I will talk about this a bit more perhaps when we talk about investment processes. But at the point one needs to understand your business from what you have on paper, and by proper records, it's not just your P&L and balance sheet. What records are you keeping to show that you are actually on top of your business? For instance, let me use agriculture, so I'm more familiar. I'm sure every business will have records that show. For instance, so if I'm going to invest in a rice business, I would like to understand what has their yields been over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. What has the rainfall pattern been over the last so number of years, and how has that impacted their business? So it's understand what are the metrics that you're actually tracking to ensure somebody that is investing in your business understand that one, what you are doing, and they can actually also make almost like an informed decision as to whether or not this thing actually shows the kind of growth trajectory that they expect it to make. The last is regulatory, because for many investors, there are so many things that are allowed when you are a small business, that it won't be allowed when you're much bigger. So a lot of investors pay attention to things like, are you paying your taxes? Are you filing your annual returns and things like that? Unfortunately, for many businesses, these areas don't look as if it's important because there's always a lot of, well, let me see how I can pay lower taxes here and there. But the truth is that at the end of the day, it's seen that if one doesn't pay attention to the laws that be, that means it's a chance that one may not be able to honor obligations. So I think those are kind of the 5 areas I think when I even doing the initial screening of investors, we pay very, 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 very important attention to. Now, the next area that that is important to me is financial clarity, and for this one, I'm a lot of these slides I'm talking almost from my own personal experience. Like Laomi said, I think over the last 10 years or so, I've been working in private equity. Before then, I'd done about 5 to 6 years in asset management. So one thing I look out for is how when you say that I need $10 million or $1 million for my business, to a reasonable extent, one has to understand exactly how you've thought through that money. That what you need is not 8 million or 11 million. That is actually 10 million because of this and that analysis that you have done. So it's and sometimes the money doesn't have to come in a single bullet. It might be in tranches. So many times, even understanding the clarity of what you need financially, because like I mentioned earlier, that it's a usual thing for almost every business owner that you meet. The first thing they say is, "Oh, I need money, I need money, I need money." So you want to even understand that, do these people really need this money? If they do, how much do they need? Because many times some of the issues might not only be money, might actually be inefficiencies in their operations. It might be poor HR resources. It might be anything. Of course, many times money will be involved, but understanding what you need the money for will help in the long way, for people to understand what you're trying to do. If you go to the next slide, please. So I think this one I touched on it a little bit, which is the investor type. So what I've experienced in my own space is that there are some specific types of investors that focus, that I'll call them generalists. So anywhere they see good returns, as long as it makes sense, they can invest. Anywhere they see the impacts generally, they can invest. Now, for most of the impact type areas, there are now some specific institutions grant money that focus on those areas and aim to support those areas. So for the fund we manage, for instance, so of course we focus on agriculture, we support agriculture. But while living in agriculture, we've seen other grants that have come to meet the businesses we have invested in, that they want to support them. Many of them are even foreign investors that just want to support agriculture in Nigeria. So the question is, if you understand where your business is, where you feel the impacts are, it's also helpful for you to find out the kind of institutions that focus on those areas. So you're also not just moving from Diamond Bank to GTB, from GTB to Access Bank, from Access Bank. That this is the kind of businesses that will probably be looking at renewable energy. They've done X amount, or they've done. Although I don't really encourage that just people be going after grants all the time, but those things take time and make people lose focus. But understanding the kind of investors that invest in your area, I think, is very helpful. The other one, the next area I would say is investment type. I'm mentioning some of these things because although I know that a few of them, of course, even as in SMEs, you may not have all the answers at the top of your head. A few of them are a little bit technical in applying. I think intuitively they might make sense, but really to apply them might be a bit technical. But I think this is they are important for you to know that, because by the time you're speaking to serious investors, irrespective of whether you know what impact fund is or what a commercial return is, they would expect some of that information from you. So you might need to spend some time to understand. So now the other area I'll bring up is investment type. So like the typical. Can you go on a little bit? So we can. Most people are more used to debt. They want to take a loan for this. They want to take a loan for that. Now in recent times, people are more. They are open to. They are more aware of the alternative, like VCs, equity and PEs and stuff like that. So I think it's important for you to also understand the differences in some of these options, and based on where your business is, based on where your current your known cash flow is, understand what works well for you. Is it an equity type investment? Is it a debt type? Is it even? Are you at the point in which what you need at that point really is just for you to just scrape as much as you can from families and friends? So it's important that before you go out to even start looking for investment, to understand your business because if you have a debt, if you take a debt, for instance, you may be required to make some payment before your investment, before your assets, your investment, your business is ripe enough to start making debt payment. Then of course you're going to have challenges. At the same time, there are some levels of your businesses that equity might just not be right, because your valuation might be so low because they have not been able to generate as much value internally, and then somebody will be coming to buy you for peanuts. So it's really many times it's actually a balancing thing. You just find out what the optimal capital structure is. I think after that, I have just one more slide. I hope I've not got more than I probably have got a bit more than 15 minutes. Yeah, so the last one I'll mention is track record. So this is so important, and I think in a way to tie to what in a way it still comes down to the story, and it ties to what Rotimi and Laomi mentioned earlier. That you have to tell a story. If somebody walks into my office and says that, oh well, I just finished from OAU, but I think I can do a business and I can make you 10 million by next month or by next year, I will say, wow, this guy's going to promise to 10 million. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to take it. But if I see somebody that tells me that, okay, I've started this business. Last year, I didn't have anything. I did 500,000. I did last 500,000 like 3 years ago. Last year, I did 800,000. Following year, I did 1 million. Because of that track record, I can believe that this guy can do something. Whether he can do the 10 million or can do 20 million is a different case. But that track is making me feel that this person is, and many times the track is not just you saying it. You have to be able to show me that indeed there's a story out there. That is one. I think this ties to traction. Somebody's Bluetooth is ready to pair. Yeah. So the last part of this is really for you to understand what that traction is. Because like I said, it's one thing for you to tell a story. It's another thing to back up that story. So if you say that you can achieve X amount, how? Is there a market for it? Is there an interest for it? Is there a growth that you have seen? Is there a model that even shows that, given these assumptions, this is how I expect to be able to get to this point in year 5? Then one can have a look at that and then take a decision. I'll pause here. I'm guessing there'll be a few questions. Some of them we can take here, but I apologize. I hope my slides are not too technical, but there are clearly things that most investors that are keen on looking at SMEs, will probably be looking at. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olumide. There are so many things that you have said that I resonate deeply with. I don't want to start recapping everything you have said, but the very first thing you said, is what bankers will call 5 C's of credit. The very first C of credit is character. So before you get married or get involved or get in bed with anybody, you have to be sure that their character is important and their character is safe. Now, how do we now start looking at our characters? You don't know them for 30 years, like you said, but what are their employees saying about them? What are their customers saying about them? What the social media even saying about you? So all those things are very important. And many times entrepreneurs begin to take this for granted. So I don't want to recap everything because I'm just super excited about the way the approach and the way you've kind of given us a structured approach. I would like to call on Rotimi again, because what he did earlier was just like a brief intro, but he has a lot more to say. So I'm going to call on Rotimi to come back in and tell us more before we go to the Q&A section.
Okay. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, clear.
Yeah, you know what? This was brilliant. And Lumide, thank you so much. Even me, I was looking and I was learning from what he was presenting, just kind of giving the background and all. So I think maybe what I'll say to just tie up and wrap up what he was saying, and I'll speak more from the perspective of an entrepreneur. I love the fact that Olumide is someone that does a lot of investing and has a proven track record there, and is giving you all firsthand information on what investors are looking at when they're deploying capital. So I just want to add a little bit of perspective from the point of view of being an entrepreneur. I'm happy to put these in a slide and share with eventually. The kind of capital that Sunfire raised so far is called venture capital. And Olumide spoke about that, right? You need equity, which usually comes from venture capitalists, or do you need debt? Because you figured out your business, you just need to kind of finance maybe assets or working capital and so on and so forth. And knowing the kind of capital that you need for your business is very critical. A lot of times when you want to take huge risks, you haven't figured out the product, you haven't figured out what kind of product it's going to be. It's just an idea in your head. You don't need debt for that. No debt provider is going to give you capital for that because they need certainty. Debt providers, they want to put money out into the world and they want it to keep yielding interest for as long as possible. That's how they make revenue. That's how they make their own sales quota, right? So if you bring something to them that they cannot bank on with certainty, it's not a bankable idea, just forget about it. You're wasting your time. And I want to give you all the example of Nike in the 70s and 60s, I think 60s and 70s, when Nike was being built originally in the 70s. There wasn't really a lot of appetite for venture capitalists, going around and investing in crazy ideas. And so Nike actually had to work with lenders very early on, and he suffered. Phil Knight suffered. If you read his book, Shoe Dog, I recommend that everyone in this call is not an impact business, if you think about it in that regard, but the story is relevant for every entrepreneur in the world, and I recommend that you read it. He got kicked out so many times from these dead guys. He almost pulled the rug from under him several times. So that time was very hard, but he showed the path and eventually opened up the venture capital landscape for a lot of other entrepreneurs and showing what a business kind of could be as well. So knowing which kind of capital you need is very critical, and I think Olumide spoke to that. We went for equity capital because we knew that we just had an idea. The technology didn't even exist. We hadn't even built it. We didn't even have anything to show anybody. So all we had was an idea and a presentation and telling people that this thing, we know what we're doing, we're going to figure it out. We have some track record doing something that was relatable before, and you should trust us with your money. But the debt provider, and we knew, by the way, we needed debt. So we knew we had to actually raise debt capital to continue doing what we're doing. But who's going to take the first risk? And this is the question, right? So the way we structured our own is that, okay, we are positioning ourselves in the market as a technology company. Most venture capitalists, they don't want to engage old traditional business models. If it's a proven business model, you just need a lot of capital to do it. It's nothing new you're bringing into the world. Go and raise debt actually, or go and meet private equity people, because they love to fund something that has been de-risked. All the risk has been removed. Well, most of the risk has been removed. It's just execution that they're interested in. I put this money in, it's almost a certainty I get it back out. But when you're looking for people that will support your crazy idea that hasn't yet been proven, Now you're talking about venture capitalists. And yes, they will take part of your company, but they will support you through, if you pick good ones, a period in which there's a tremendous level of uncertainty. And so we went for that. Now, that's one of the first things that you have to make a good determination about. Some other things that you have to be careful about is sometimes in Nigeria or maybe other African countries, we just think too local. We think too locally. So we don't think about the global context. And I think Olumide was touching on this. You have to know the investors you're engaging. The impact space and the clean energy space and the sustainable agriculture and so on and so forth. This is generally within this orbit of what is called the impact-driven investment landscape and entrepreneurial landscape. Whether you like it or not, you are going to be facing impact investors. And impact investors, they behave a little bit differently than the traditional venture capitalists and so on and so forth. So you have to know the global narrative of what's going on. The big backdrop is that climate change is real. A subset of that is that people are going through economic and climate change related migration. It's going to lead to a lot of poverty. It's going to lead to a lot of migration, economic migration patterns. Food value chains are going to suffer as a result. They're going to evolve. And so anytime you engage these people, you need to know that they have a mandate that is related to that big global problem. So how do you make your local issue relevant to the global context? If you miss this connection between the two things, you may miss essentially what they're looking for that enables them to support you, because they want to be able to show that if I support this business, I'll be able to do this in the future and unlock this kind of value. The other thing is with it, I'll just try and wrap up here, is identify that overlap between your interests. So don't go pick a business that you just think investors want to put money into. Pick a business that overlaps with their interests, but that you are passionate about and that actually solves and brings impact into the world. The other part of this is building a compelling team. I think Olumide zeroed in on this. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far and have lots of impact, you have to go together. But who you go with will determine your success. You know, there's many nights as an entrepreneur or CEO, you'll be suffering there. It's the person that is with you on that team that will pick you up, dust you up and say, keep going, let's keep going, and then we'll figure this out together. And that team will breed confidence amongst the investors. Then that traction is important, and having a good person that actually is comfortable talking to investors. This one is very important. One of you has to, if none of you are comfortable talking to investors, one of you has to learn rapidly how to talk the numbers, how to show the financial model, how to show the presentation, how to do your 3-minute pitch, your 2-minute pitch, your 1-minute pitch, your 30-second pitch, your 10-word pitch. All these things, someone has to master it fast for you to be able to, because you need to get hundreds, thousands of repetitions of speaking to investors, failing, speaking to them again. And every time you do, the person that's doing this or the people doing this are looking for, okay, what did I get wrong in this conversation? If I incorporate what they gave me feedback on into the next corporation, you'll see that you'll have more traction. And if you just keep repeating this exercise, you become a master potentially at fundraising. So that's an important piece of it. If you can, get into an accelerator. You know, some of these accelerators will launch your unknown brand and put you onto the world stage. We went through one that is climate related and is impact related. And a lot of people globally know about our brand that we don't even know about us today because of the platform that they put us on. So if you can, it's not a must, get into an accelerator, but make sure it aligns with your interests, make sure it aligns with your long-term scalability like Olumide was talking about, and make sure they can bring value that elevates your brand, elevates your cause, and helps your mission become known to the world. So those are just a few nuggets I'd like to add. Allow me, and I'll try and summarize those later on. But yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. You know what I like best about what we've put together here is the different perspectives. So Rotimi has been giving us perspective from someone that actually went through the pains of fundraising. And Olumide spoke to us about we're the ones that are assessing the pipeline, we're giving out the funds, present to us. So it's really amazing what we've been listening to. So thank you so much. I would also recommend your book, the book, The Shoe Dog by the Nike CEO. I'm sure it's going to be very exciting. Thank you very much. So now we'll quickly move to the Q&A session. So what are
sorry, allow me.
Okay.
I just wanted to touch on something very quickly that Rotimi mentioned that I thought was very important. You know, when he mentioned about speaking to investors and preparing your 3 minutes pitch, so to speak. So I think it's very important, really, because you can't be looking for money and then you're locked up in your nice office in Ikoyi or Agege or wherever. You know, so it's also important to once tell your story, but look for avenues to tell your story. So if you're hearing about events that relate to your business, you know, it's not easy to pitch. It's not easy to tell that story, but it's also like Rotimi said, you need to look for ways to speak to these investors. Look for somebody in your team that is good at those kind of things, and then go out of your way to look for those opportunities to actually engage with these investors. I think it's very important. Thanks, Rotimi, for sharing that.
Okay, thank you so much, Olumide. So your pitch, like Olumide and Rotimi have said, your 10-minute speech, your 10-word speech, you know, just like a phrase, who we are and what we do, and then it inspires the listener to want to listen to more. 3-minute speech, 10-minute speech, your 1-minute elevator speech, everything, or pitch rather, everything, you know, very important. And the fact that you have to learn, at least somebody in your team must learn and be comfortable with talking about the numbers, talking about everything that has to do with your business. And of course, Rotimi mentioned join an accelerator, and Afla Adventure Lab is bringing you something, you know, quite similar, a venture building accelerator. So Q&A, please, you could put your Q&A in your questions in the box, but I'll quickly go with the questions that we have. So question, and this first question goes to Olumide. Now, Afla Adventure Lab, Olumide was saying agriculture. So I'm going to talk a bit about what we do later on, but, you know, we focus on agri-tech, you know, because if you think of the narrative of the climate change, it actually affects the agri sector a lot. You know, so one of the questions here is that as a business owner in the agri sector, how can I effectively identify the right investors for my company? Perhaps you want to just touch a bit on
that. Thank you very much. So I think it's still like what I try to do in this, like, is also to mention what will be realistic for both an agri, any as long as what you're doing is impact. So I think the first is because there's one beauty of agriculture, which is probably the same in climate and renewable energy and stuff, you know, that is that in agriculture, you can tell a strong impact story. And then if done properly, you can actually tell a strong return story. You know, so if you're in the agricultural sector, you actually have the opportunity to tell your story to almost anybody that will invest in any area, you know, from what you call it, FMCG to food to electronics, as long as the investor is one that wants to be able to tell, to make money. You know, you can make money in this space. Now, so apart from those kind of investors, one thing that you've noticed in agriculture is that we now have a lot of other grants, you know, that people that are invested in trying to put in money in agriculture from all over the world. Even our own fund that we manage, we have investors from Germany, we have investors from the UK, you know, the Dutch. There's interest all over for things that have to do with impact. And then when you now layer on the return opportunities in agriculture, it just makes it something that is good. But the issue is that many people, is that rigor of putting together your thoughts and presenting the financial opportunities as well as the impact story, I think, is the biggest challenge.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. So basically, it's just to identify, you know, what sectors do these investments invest in, so that you will not be talking to someone that is interested in fintech and bringing your agri story, or you not talk to someone that is interested in health tech and then you're telling them about renewable energy. So it has to be laser focused. Right. Okay. So the second question is for Olumide, and it says that as I'm trying to raise funds, what are the common challenges that climate and energy startups like mine usually encounter during the fundraising process? So I guess maybe you can talk about the challenges that you have encountered, and then that will help our listeners.
So if you ask me, I think one of the biggest challenges, and perhaps Rotimi can share some of the issues that he had when he was trying to raise his own capital. I think one of the biggest challenges I had is even the ability of the sorry, I just realized that my video was off. I just realized, yeah. So one of the challenges I saw is that while the pipeline company, the potential investing company has all the ideas on his head, to be able to put it together, think through it and put it together in a way that will make sense to an external person, because most financial institutions, they have processes, they have things that they have to show. So it's not enough for you to know and to discuss it. You have to be able to discuss it in a way that somebody can take it away and take it to the bank, And I mean, I'm using the word bank loosely. I'm talking about actually push it through for you. So the first thing you have to do is just take that step back to put down your idea from end to end. Understanding that what do I need to, what makes this thing interesting? Why would somebody, if you were the one putting down money, what will you see there that will make that investment itself look good to you? And then that's what should drive you. Because for me, what I love the most is when I'm leaving a potential investor and I'm wishing that even if I had my own money, only be the business yourself, I'll put money in this person's business. Once you can get me to that point, you can be sure I'm going to invest in your. I'm going to. So when I hear that, don't worry. I'm sure in my mind that is nothing. So it's really for you to think through that idea, that to ensure that anybody listening to you understands what you're trying to do and how you plan to achieve that your goal, not in promises or using anecdotes, but clearly stating how you're planning to do it. I think it's very important.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Rotimi, so what challenges, do you think, even from your experience, the kind of challenges you faced, and or general challenges that other people have faced?
Yeah. So once again, it depends on the type of capital that you're raising, but when we were building our first business, Aspire, we were essentially like doing solar installations across Nigeria. And, I left a very, pretty good job to come do this. I was working for Siemens, and, we had all the money and whatever in the world to go and be investing in power plants across Africa. And, they treated you like a star, right? And so I came in to and saw that, well, I don't think this grid thing is going to work for at least 100 years if we keep doing it at the pace that we're doing it right now. So I was very compelled to go into the startup space. But I have to tell you, leaving corporate world and jumping into startup, honestly, I didn't yet have the chops to be an entrepreneur. Like I thought that I could. And I think the proof ultimately ends up being in the fact that you have to go through this journey. There's like the Greek narrative of the heroes, the arc of a hero, like the hero's journey. You first kind of go through a process of being called, and then you're called into the thing, you reject the thing. So I rejected it for a long period of time. And then eventually you have this moment that breaks you, right? It breaks you. And then it's from that breaking that you now start being rebuilt as an entrepreneur. So that process for me was, we came into the first business, we thought we knew what we were doing. And then we started finding that, this thing called building a technology company, it's a very specific type of company you have to be building for venture capitalists to come and invest in it. When they were looking at our first company, they kept saying, this thing, you're basically like a glorified installer, if you will, right? Like, you're building an asset heavy, you're almost trying to be like an OEM, and none of them want to invest for the most part. I'm not saying they're not funds that do that, but most of them don't want to invest in hardware companies. That's just the truth. Venture capitalists. I'm not saying that there aren't other types of investors that will do that. So you have to know the investor type. we kept going to venture capitalists with a solar installation business. And then they kept hitting us with this thing that Lumide talked about. How are you going to scale this? Once we couldn't give the, how are you going to scale this means with a small team, with limited resources. How do you go from, with same limited resources, how do you serve 1 million people with that same limited resources? You don't go and hire 1 million people, right? You only have 100 people, 100 people serving 1 million people. That's scale. One technology, you build this one time and it can enable, billions of dollars versus having to constantly keep investing, billions of dollars in order to get billions of dollars. That's not the same as scale. And so it wasn't until we experienced this, like getting rejected tons of times, that we now had a moment and I said, we're not going to reach our goal going this way. And so we had to really break ourselves and then start building ourselves back up. And that's when we came up with the Sunfire version that now understood that what we need to do is enable other entrepreneurs in the market to serve their communities. And that way, one technology will be able to enable those people just with embedded financing to reach millions of other people. And so that was where we had a strong pivot. So pivoting, being broken is part of the process, and allowing VCs and investors to give you hard feedback so you can rebuild yourself is something that I would say is a good challenge, good problem to experience and go through.
That's very key. I mean, the fact that technology is just the key to scaling, there's really no way about it. And if you want to go the VC route, technology is something that you have to tie into whatever business model you have existing. Super, thank you so much. So Olumide, now I just want to touch on a question here that talks about due diligence. So it says, could you provide insights on the due diligence process from investors' perspective? So basically, we want our audience to be able to prepare in a better way.
Okay, so I'm assuming everybody on this group knows what due diligence is. I'm sure Rotimi probably hates that word, due diligence. It's crazy. But so the way I would describe due diligence is that for weeks and months of speaking to these investors, you've given them tons of information. At some point they will come and say, "Come, we want to come and kick the tires. We want to come and check that indeed all what you are saying is true." Basically, that's what due diligence is. Verifying everything that they've heard so far. So for many investors, before they get to the due diligence stage, they would have been almost convinced that, okay, they like this idea, they like you, they like everything you've said so far. But most of that is based on information that you have given. So it's really, the due diligence process is really putting your money where your mouth is. They will ask you, or rather, we will ask you for all sorts of things, just to verify. If you say that you've been doing X amounts over the last few years, we want to check it. If you say that you have these potential investors, potential customers, we want to verify. If you say that the land you're planning to use is yours, we want to confirm it. So the due diligence is really evidential backup of everything that you have told them to date, so they can live there and say yes. Now, the biggest challenge that I've seen in due diligence is when usually a big red flag, when a potential investment says A, and then we now go through that due diligence process, and we now realize that it is wrong. Many times it's best you tell them, let them know where the challenges are, where the weakness is. So when you're going through that process, you're already building your narrative around that. If it's something about, we have 500 employees working in 3 different locations, and I pitched that to my own investment committee. We now go for due diligence and realize that he actually had 22 employees. It's hard for me to now go back. So actually, he said 5. So those kind of things are just major deal breakers or red flags. So I think the due diligence just means ensuring that you have all the documentation, you have all the records necessary to back up everything, every single thing that you've told your investors. I hope that's clear enough.
Yes, super. Thank you. Rotimi, would you like to add anything to that?
Due diligence. As As we speak right now, after this call, I'm going into assembling more due diligence responses. Like it's for debt investors, that one is like it feels like a legal process. Like you have to, it's very, the things they go for are very in depth and very, you have to essentially be very articulate. It's more like accounting, if you will, than it is what people think is venture capital fundraising. Maybe they see it as a little bit more the sexier side of fundraising, but the dealing with debt investors, you have to have all your audited financial statements. You have to have your management accounts. When they ask for management accounts, it's like non-audited financial statements. It has to be up to the last quarter. You have to be able to break those things down. You have to be able to understand your unit economics and show them cash flow certainty, your balance sheet. So a lot of those things are very critical. Your incorporation documents have to be tight. Your legal structure, whether you have a board in place, so on and so forth. All of these things, governance for debt providers, very critical. What's the structure I'm investing in? Is it a special purpose vehicle? That's a one-time vehicle created specifically to finance a project or a set of projects? Or am I loaning you money? Your company, am I loaning you the money? And if I'm loaning you the money, how am I assured it's not going to get used to pay people's salaries instead of being used as working capital to generate income that will repay my loan? So those things are very critical. If it's venture capital, they'll usually start with your deck. So this deck, at every point in time during fundraising, your deck must be up to date. If an investor asks you for a deck, you don't get that deck to them within the next day or week maximum. Maybe you ask to say, please give me a week and I'll get it to you because we have to update some information. So managing expectations is critical there. But that deck must always be up to date. So you always hit them with that deck, you have it ready. They may ask you for more information. So this is to say, it's not what you've shown me in the deck is not enough. You'll be prepared to have a call. So a call is used to expand on the deck. That's where they will get most of the information they are looking for. So part of the due diligence process is that call. They want to see how confidently and how quickly you can answer questions about your business. They don't want you to say, okay, sorry, I don't have the answer. Let me go and come back and we'll have another call. They want to know that you can think on your feet and that you are thinking about the future of your business. So that call is part of the due diligence process. Outside of that, they may ask you for an investment memorandum. This is a document, longer form, usually like, the old business plans that we used to prepare before the whole deck thing came about. So this will probably be a longer form document where you talk about your outlook on the industry, the team, you expand on your team. So you have more breadth and latitude to talk about your team. You go into research about the industry. You go into things like how you do risk management and all this kind of stuff, right? So all the other concerns, you address it inside that place. And then of course, they'll now go for what's called your cap table. Who are the investors on your cap table today, i.e. who owns equity in this company? Some of them may ask to drill down when they see a name that they can't really figure out who that is because they have their own KYC things that they need to make sure they don't invest in a company that's related to someone that is doing drug dealing or whatever the case may be, right? So having your cap table always ready, knowing your ownership structure is very critical. They don't want to see situations where you have given away too much equity, especially you as a sponsor of the company. If you've given away too much equity of your company, you will not raise money. It's simple as that. Because they don't want a situation where you as the promoter can easily lose control of the company. And then, God knows how the board has been structured. And then their money now gets consumed by some other guy coming in with a check. And then they're out of the game. So they don't want those types of situations. So all of these things are important. And then the ESG aspect of this, guys, is so important now. So I'm getting pummeled every couple of weeks by current investors and new investors. And Olumide would know this because he's probably the one pushing some of these types of requests to people. But you say you want to be in the impact space, you have to be ready to know how many lives have you impacted this last quarter, this last month? How much money have you saved people? how much, value, how many emissions, how many CO2, tons, metric tons of CO2 emissions have you abated? How many will you be doing in 5 years? Why should I keep supporting you? Because they have these reporting requirements. So all of this is part of due diligence, and there's more. We can't go into everything right now, but always happy to support in the future and share more information with people.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rotimi. Thank you, Olumide, for these fantastic nuggets. So I want to pause here and quickly go to the questions that are in the chat, but most of them I'll be answering by myself. So someone, Kingsley says, if your investors want to see your product and sales, must the business be registered before you are granted funds? Yes. Alice says that we should outline investors in agri sector, and I think there's a question coming up on, apart from VC and private equity, what are the other sectors? Then I think there's a follow-up question by Alice saying that, do you have to build your own infrastructure, or can you like maybe outsource your tech infrastructure to another company? I'm not quite sure how to answer this. So it says, as an agribusiness company, do we necessarily have to build our own tech infrastructure to gain investor attention? If we subscribe to a third-party tech infrastructure to carry out our operation, how will this come across to investors? I don't know, Olumide or Rotimi, anyone can just quickly take that question. So I can repeat it. As an agribusiness company, do we necessarily have to build our own tech infrastructure to gain investors' attention? If we subscribe to a third-party tech infrastructure to carry out our operation, how would this come across to investors?
So I will speak from my own perspective. So pardon me, please. Let me just. Yeah. So I'm trying to turn on my video. Yeah. So for me, I don't think it matters whether it's yours or not. But what I think is important is that if it's critical to your business, if it's important to what you're doing, I would like to have comfort that it's within what you can control. So if there's a particular area of your business that is so key, but it's too dependent on solely dependent on a particular another company or other institution, I will probably be concerned. So if you have that, if you're using a third party, but maybe there's a backup to that backup, or enough to give me comfort that while it's not yours, but these companies that it's a stable, is a useful, is an efficient, effective structure that you're working with, I think any investor will be fine. But it's important for them to see that that the fact that it's not fully within your control, it still doesn't create additional substantial risk to the business.
So I guess it just has to do with the risk that is perceived. Okay, so there's a next question here that says that for a startup going into an area and you don't have traction, how can you raise funds? I think traction is key. Start with what you have, where you are, if you want to read that particular phrase. So you can start with grants, you can start with competitions, start where you are, at least do something to have some history to say, like Rotimi said, he had a solar installation, it was part of a solar installation company before. They said, okay, we're taking the knowledge and the traction we have in this company to start what we're doing, but there has to be some traction, some evidence that you can basically do this. Right, so next question is,
Umi, I want to. I'm hoping we can do a little bit of real talk here as well, right?
Yes.
So there's a chat going on in the chat section.
Okay.
This is Mr. Israel Faleye that's brought this up. I want to kind of pull that conversation into the dialogue here, and maybe Olumide can also look at it as well. So I don't know if Israel's there, if you can show your video or something, so that if I see you on the street, I won't walk past you by mistake. But so he asked a question essentially saying, can I share some investors for solar and green energy and a green energy startup? Okay. Now, I'm not, imagine I was an investor, right? Or someone that you are actually truly trying to get help from. And imagine you think I actually am a gatekeeper to potential help for you, right? Now, somehow you locked out and you got, or let's use Olumide as the example. Somehow you got into the room or into a dialogue one-on-one with Olumide, somehow. and maybe you've done your research, you've seen, Olumide is a guy, he seems to have invested in this, invested in, maybe he'll be able to get me to where I need to get to. Now, one of the challenges with getting into this situation, and this is critical to raising your first million or your first 2 million, or even your first 100,000, because before we get to 1 million, let's be real, we have to start with the first $10,000 check or $5,000 check, right? You've got to come prepared to that conversation, making it easy for Olumide to help you. You have to make, because at that point, I'm a customer. Because I'm going to now go and start doing work to figure out who should I introduce you to? Who should I connect you to? Who should I point you in the direction of? I'm going to use part of my social capital. Yeah, people always think about, should I introduce this person? Should I not introduce this person? To now say, hey, you should consider this, this particular entity. So by asking a broad question, right, which investors for solar and green energy startup, you may have lost me, right? Because I'm like, what kind of startup are we talking about here? And then we drilled down Israel, and then you said climate tech. But for me, what is climate tech? Climate tech is a general descriptor of an entire field of companies which span from renewable energy to agriculture to mobility and so on and so forth. So this is why I said earlier on, having your 10-word pitch, your 30-second pitch, your 1-minute pitch, this thing is so critical, especially at this stage where some of you are at. The ability in 5 words or sometimes less than X number of characters to guide me to what your business is, what the business model is, and why I should care is something that is a critical skill set that I would encourage, allowing me that everyone on this call, you get practice in repetition, repetition, repetition. So I think people like Israel and everything that have the courage, to speak up and say, hey, I need help. That's a really good sign. But then you have to be able to convert that opportunity into actual help, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Rotimi. I know we are kind of running a lot into conversations and I have to skip some slides. But so what we're going to do is that there are a lot more questions that we may not have been able to answer. So what we're going to do is to collate answers to all those questions and share with you, everyone that has registered. But I want to quickly talk about Afla Adventure Lab and see, so that you can get to know what exactly it is and why we're doing this. So basically, Afla Adventure Lab has designed 6 distinct program tracks. And the idea is to propel startups into success. I've talked about sustainability. I've talked about investment readiness. I've talked about commercially viable, right? So these program tracks are Outlier, Grow, Move, Energize, Make, Build, and Earth. So Outlier Grow basically focuses on, is the program track that fosters collaboration to accelerate and commercialize groundbreaking solutions, focus on agri-tech, so the climate smart agri kind of thing, agri-tech, digital platform, food waste, or maybe productive use of energy in the agri sector, maybe lower carbon fertilizer. Just think of this kind of awesome ideas that you can think about in impact that ties agriculture. The next one is Outlier Move. So we're talking clean transportation. So yeah, we want to work with companies that have transformation technology that reshapes the future of mobility. So electric scooter, electric anything that we can think about. So we believe that we bring together startups and want to fast track that sustainable logistics solutions, sustainable movement solutions in agriculture, in clean tech. Then Outlier energizes what we are all very familiar with. So we're talking power and electricity. And here we focus on clean energy solutions because it's very critical to combating climate change. Outlier Make is manufacturing. Here focuses on circular economy, manufacturing, so recycling, alternatives to plastics. So that kind of, this product actually just focus on this environmental impact of the traditional production processes. Now, the one that I'm pretty excited about is the newest, and it's Outlier Earth. And Outlier Earth is wants to support startups that are on a mission to revolutionize the extractive industry. So mining, oil and gas, what kind of products that are driving innovation, maybe sustainable mining, eco-conscious practices that that with a strong focus on environmental stewardship. So that's basically what our product and program tracks are. I think I skipped Outlier Build, which is basically buildings, green buildings, sustainable buildings, maybe energy efficiency solutions, or and everything still ties into renewables, putting solar panels on buildings, solar home systems, or some awesome ideas that I've never thought about. Entrepreneurs always, startups always bring out those things, and I'm like, wow, I never imagined this is an idea. As long as you're able to tie technology to what you're doing, it's very exciting. Right, so the team will be available on the call. If you have any questions, you can just have that chat. So I would like to say thank you to our speakers. It's been very, very interesting. I had the slides that I skipped, and it was supposed to be spotlight. And here, I just wanted to highlight what Sunfire does, because it's a pleasure to have Rotimi here, and I'm very excited. So basically, from what we gathered, I wanted to ask him to, maybe somebody could come and speak about it, but I think the internet has given me the best information. So basically, an energy financial platform that connects people who want solar energy access to payment plans that match their needs. So basically, it's like a financial technology that optimizes and matches the right clean energy solutions to meet the needs of everybody, you and I. So payment plans, installation support, maintenance, everything is tied into what Sunfire is doing. So I will encourage you to visit their website, contact the company, and be able to find solutions that really helps. And lastly, I said it earlier that our speaker Olumide speaks on financial, personal finance. And so Olumide is not just a renowned agri-finance expert, but he's a speaker and an author on personal finance. So his book can be found on Amazon. Let me say this. Both Olumide and Rotimi didn't ask me to do this, but I just felt it's a very good privilege to have them, and just use this opportunity to talk about what I know about their books and their personal things. So I have Olumide's book. I've actually read it on my own, and it's a fantastic book, and so I recommend you, just check that on Amazon. So whether you are a salary earner, an entrepreneur, rich, or you're operating on a shoestring budget, if you don't save now, you'll be living continuously on a borrowed. And we know that why are we in business? Why are we entrepreneurs? Why are we trying to build something? We're trying to have a sustainable future for ourselves. So you want to inculcate those knowledge that will help you create wealth and leave wealth for your children's children. So I think this book is a great recommend, in addition to the book by the Nike CEO. So with that, I would like to say thank you, and maybe ask Olumide and Rotimi to give us their last words or final parting words before we call this, before we close.
Okay, maybe I'll go first. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you very much to allow me and the Outliers Hub. I actually had a good time with you guys, and I was quite impressed with the people that attended. You guys, from the questions, I can see the hunger. So my last point to just mention, and perhaps Rotimi can confirm, is that raising funds is not easy. To take a lot of time. You probably hear a lot of no's, much more no's than you would like to hear, but the truth is that all you just need is just one yes. So I think I would just want to encourage you that even in the middle of all those no's, you just keep pushing until a door opens. All the best to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, I just want to make sure that you don't experience the same painful, well, you are going to experience pain, but I don't want you to experience as much pain as we experienced. So I want you to be really sharp with your pitches, and treating the investor, treating seeking capital like a sales process. It is a sales process. You have to, think about what's the universe. So once again, going back to the question that actually was Kingsley, not Israel, that asked it. So going back to that question, if you take a broad swath at who should I talk to, you will waste time, they will waste your time, and you won't raise any money. If you're very deliberate and you say, okay, this is the universe of all I'm not even going to focus on people that are not in the climate and, Africa, people that are not focusing on climate, energy access, and Africa, I'm not talking to them. That's already a really good filter. Then you apply a next filter. Okay, what kind of companies have they invested in? What's their track record? You have to see that they are actually doing something in that space before you go and invest your time engaging these people. And so, for example, you can look at some of the companies that invested in Sunfire. The information is kind of public. It will give you a sense of, okay, who might be interested in this. Even up to Sterling Bank is in, their alternative investment arm is investing in climate-related ventures, right? So it's such a broad landscape, and I really would like you guys to have success with this. So treat it like a sales process. Make sure one of your co-founders has a very sweet tongue with talking to money people, okay? So otherwise, we will be here. I'm on LinkedIn. Maybe you can reach me through Olawumi from time to time. I'm happy to kind of give coaching to anyone from time to time. Love working on people's pitches. So maybe Wumi, in the future, you can have like a pitch training session. I think we practiced for hundreds of hours before we did our own thing at Norskin. And then you come out with this beautiful 2 to 3 minute or less than 2 minute presentation, which has all the information. So happy to support that in the future. But this is great work. Thank you very much, Wumi, and good luck to everyone that's here.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everyone. So and now I know our speakers need to leave. Especially me, this is he's actually having to travel today. But the floor will be open to members. If you have questions, Miriam and Shuaib will be here, and I'll also be here to ask questions, to answer your questions. Right, but I think our speakers may want to leave, except they want to hang out with us.
Hi, I have been raising my hand and I left a question for Olumide in the chat. Sorry, I couldn't wait anymore because I wasn't sure if it was going to drop off or not. Okay, so apologies for bumping in, but I wasn't sure if it was going to drop off immediately. And that's why I wanted to ask him before he goes. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really insightful. I wanted to know, because you do funding for agro businesses, what do you address the needs for businesses between the agro climate boundary? That's one. Two, do you give funds denominated in USD or in Naira, considering the fluctuations in currencies these days? And three, what are the options of access to impact debt or developmental debt denominated in Naira, preferably? Of course, if we have to do USD, yes, we would, but we wanted to know what's the option in Naira for companies such as ours. For background, just because you might ask us, we do suspended smart mobility, electric vehicles similar to Tesla, but suspended smart mobility. And we are currently in the process of navigating approvals for right-of-way with the government of Lagos. At the same time, we've also collaborated with a company called Cobox Stores to use our solutions to provide logistic solutions for moving rural to urban agro produce. So that's where we find ourselves in that mix. And that's why I felt like I should speak to Olumide about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make it very brief because, when it comes to investment, it's also specific. I mean, so we don't spend half of the day just discussing your own plan. So I'll make it general as well. So generally, in the fund that we manage, so because we do agriculture, we've kind of relaxed the definition of agriculture. So as long as it touches on food sustainability, we can do it. So if it's production, processing, agri-tech, agroclimate, like you mentioned, as long as we can tie it to that is useful or helpful to the agricultural value chain, yes, we can do it. Secondly, on FX, so what has happened is, the short answer is yes, we give Naira-based investments. Now, for many, what we've seen is that depending on the kind of investors you have, many of them, even if they have what we have is a dollar-based fund, but we give Naira-based investment, which means that the fund bears the FX risk. So what we end up doing is that before we do an investment, we make our assumptions of how much devaluation we see, and then we hope that the value we'll make from that business should be enough to cushion any FX risk that would be able to would incur, so to speak. So it's many. I think a lot of investors are moving away from passing FX risk to SMEs, because I think it's usually too big for them and even too hard for them to hedge. So on that, so we give Naira based, although our fund is dollar, we big Naira based loan, loans, financing. We can be equity, can be debt, or something in between. So so we do that. I think there's one more part of your question. I think you asked for them potential investors that invest in Naira denominated loans. Was that
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if you do, so that was why I threw it out there, that in case you don't, what are the options?
We do. So we do, and like Rotimi said, there are lots of Nigerian investors that invest in this space. Like it's amazing because he mentioned that there's been banks that now have impact focused facilities. They have things like that. So there are actually quite a few. I would just encourage you that you may need to spend some time to even understand what are those opportunities out there. Just try to get as much. I really don't have a list here of all the banks, but I know there are quite a few. Some of them have met us, some of them we've heard, that they've actually given funding to impact-based investments.
Okay, final question. Best way to reach you after this?
I think the best way is Laomi. She harasses me all the time.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thanks for your question.
You can reach out to our team and then we'll be able to connect you with both of the speakers. Thank you. Thank you so much. There's somebody else. Okay, I think the hand is dropped. There was another raise.
I don't know. I might need to rush up. Is there a last?
No. I think the person has dropped the hand. So maybe the answer question has been.
Pardon me. I'd really love to stay a bit longer, but I really have to rush now. I thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I hope that, and if the opportunity comes, I'll be able to share more of my thoughts again. Okay, so I think I'll be dropping off now.
Thank you, Olumide. It was a
Thank you very much. Okay, then. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I think Rotimi is still on the call. I saw a question by Gift earlier that was talking about the registration, but I can't seem to find it anymore. Like, how did you register Sunfires Solar and all that? I don't know if you picked it, because I know you've been answering questions on the chat since. Hello, Gift, are you there?
Yes, okay. Yeah.
I've seen your
question. Okay, go ahead. All right. So my question is from the initial introduction, like Aspire solutions maybe span from, Sunfire span from Aspire solutions. So it means there have been some engagement in the hardware space before going to software. So I want to present it to investors, right? Do you have to register Sunfire again as your full entity, or more like a subsidiary to Aspire, as the case may be? Because sometimes you could be having the issue where you're trying to present a product and they really want to ask, okay, where is this? Who was the parent company of this product? So are we just going to be carrying the major software products you're pivoting to investors directly, or is it going to carry the general name thereabouts where it came out from?
Okay, yeah, good question. This is where, and you have to be very careful with like how you structure pivots if you get into those spaces and stuff like that. You don't need to change your company or structure or holdings or anything of that nature to make a pivot. You can keep the same brand if you want to, and you can just basically, introduce a new business line. It's like, okay, we're not doing this again. We're doing this now, right? So so you don't need to do what we did. What we did is harder, I have to be honest with you, right? Where we determined that it didn't make sense to persist with a brand that had become so entrenched with and so synonymous with one type of business model, that we believed it was very critical to create a new brand from scratch. We essentially started a new company. And so someone asked that in the chat. We decided to go back to zero. So that's harder, right? And then, so what you do with that, Aspire and Sunfire are not part of the same they're not the same company, and one is not a subsidiary to the other. They're two completely distinct entities. And remember, I mentioned something about your cap table. What happens when you have investors in your first thing and you realize, oh, this thing is not going to work, right? What happens to the money that they put into that first thing? Because one of the most critical things that you all have as entrepreneurs is your reputation. And so it's likely that many of the ventures we are all working on will fail. The first one, the second one, or whatever. The third one might work. Or you might be one of those people where it's like the first, you're a one-hit wonder, right? But you have to be prepared for those, okay, I've learned this, let me now change it to this. I've learned this, let me now adapt it like this. And so how you treat those people that supported you in the first instance is very important. In our case, we chose to carry them along. And that's goodwill that we accrued from that process was part of the support that we used to actually go into the new thing. Because if those people had been mad at us, if they had been on the street saying, investors, you guys should not go anywhere near these people, we would have been dead on arrival, because all these investors talk to one another. And you'll just find that as you're trying to pitch to someone, they already know about your story and they're like, if I give this guy money now, the next thing we know, so on and so forth. So I think summarizing there, Aspire is a separate entity. And so we chose to create a new brand from scratch because it was doing something completely different in the industry. But you could have a situation where you instead just say, let me make it a subsidiary and have it as a business line. So that's also perfectly acceptable if you don't want to go through that other route. Gift, does that help?
Yes, it's clear. Yeah, thank you.
All right then. Okay, if maybe there's one last question we could take, but if not, I guess we could just call it a day. Anyone? Okay. All right then. Thank you everyone for.
Hi, Laomi.
Okay, right. Yeah, may I know who's speaking?
Yeah.
Maybe if they can come on.
Israel.
Israel. Okay, that's Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like I just want to ask, what are the avenues for scaling it?
No.
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Are you able to come on video by any chance? It's good to put a face to the name.
Yeah. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to know what are the the avenues for linking up with Afla Adventure Lab and the speakers as well, Olumide and Rotimi,
Okay.
after the call or something. Okay.
All right, thank you. So that's our question. Basically, the screen that I'm sharing is businessoutliers.com. You can just click on this website, and I think they've already put that on the chat box as well. Click on that, and I don't know if we have phone numbers. Yeah, there are phone numbers and emails. Okay, this is even better. So the website, phone numbers, everything on this screen. So I think you can reach us here. I should have been sharing that earlier, but it's fine. So so I just leave this screen open. Thank you very much, Rotimi. I also thank Olumide, although he's left the meeting already, but I think this has brought us to the end of this very insightful discussion. I promise to reach out to you again, Rotimi, because you have offered, the green leaf. So definitely we'll be reaching out to you more often than this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and it seems like the group is full of questions. I'll be here over the years, hopefully, to try and provide some guidance where I can. So I'm sure there'll be some amazing companies that come out of this batch. So great work, Laomi. Thank you.
Thank you.